go ahead and share my screen here. We're gonna do the like magic wall of mirrors up. Into
Oh
the
my
future.
goodness.
Oh my Lanta. Hey everyone. Pete Kazanji here, founder of Atrium. For folks who don't know, Atrium is a AI-driven sales effectiveness platform that helps sales organizations improve the performance of their reps through the better application of data. And I'm really excited to talk about AI stuff today because this is something that we are really excited about here at Atrium. So that's what we're going to be getting into. Introduce my colleague here in a second, but really quick, if folks are interested, I know it's the middle of summer right now, so you're probably not thinking about hoodies, but I've got mine on, my Sales Nerd hoodie. If you want to get your own Sales Nerd hoodie, we're going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat here. Get yourself one of our handy dandy Sales Nerd hoodies, and then also some of the Atrium data-driven management metrics trees there. So Elliot's going to drop that link. Couple of intros here. I'm Pete Kazanji. I'm one of the founders of Atrium, also one of the founders of Modern Sales Pros. How I kind of got into data-driven sales management was my last software company, Talentbin, when I went from being a business generalist founder to our first seller, our first sales manager, and then our sales leader, and really kind of like realize that sales organizations are just revenue factories, and that if you appropriately instrument the inputs, intermediaries and outputs of each rep, and of pipeline, top of funnel, mid funnel, etc., you can have a better understanding of like what's going on and where there are shortfalls and how you can fix them. So that's a little bit on me. Ended up writing a book on sales for startups called Founding Sales. And then I want to introduce my colleague, Sean, here, who manages our AE team. Sean, you want to give folks a little bit of a rundown on what you spend your time doing and some of the sales organizations you've worked at before?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Excited to be here. So prior to coming over to Atrium about 4 years ago, I was at Yelp, where I was actually a manager of 15 reps over there.
Oh boy.
Then I was an AE myself for about a year and a half. And then before that, I thought that I was going to be a Major League Baseball scout. And as we can see, that didn't actually transpire. So fast forward, I've been at Atrium now for 4 years. As Pete called out, I now report into him and lead the sales org over here, and it's been a blast.
Where's Otani gonna go?
Hell of a question. No idea.
No idea.
Don't know who
All
can afford him.
right. He's worth every penny. Cool, folks. So I'm excited about talking about AI and sales management stuff today. There's a new presentation that I put together, and excited to road test it on everyone. Essentially, what we're going to be talking about is challenges in modern sales management and why AI matters for modern sales management. A little bit of how we've implemented some of that stuff here at Atrium. Specifically as relates to synthesis and then actions, and then we're going to talk about how AI can support leadership and operations, kind of like the next level up from sales management and what have you. We'll do a little bit of a demo in the middle as well. So get you out of here in the next like 45 or so. So without further ado, cool. Why does sales management need AI? Well, primarily the reason why is because management by metric historically has been pretty challenging for sales managers, leaders, and the operations folks who support them. The reason why is because there's kind of this hierarchy of data-driven management that is required that you have to get up in order to successfully improve rep performance through better data-driven management. And so essentially what that looks like is you got to, first level here, you got to know what metrics to track, you got to collect the relevant data, and then you have to build the reporting in question, then set goals on these things. And so if you have a handy dandy sales operations function or maybe a data team or whatever, they might help you out with this, or maybe you might have to do it yourself. The problem is that even if you do this, your job has only just begun, because now, like, if you do this and don't actually pay attention to the metrics, right? Like, look at them on a recurring basis. Um, you're not going to actually be able to detect issues and improve performance, let alone even if you detect the issues, now you have to diagnose and then also prescribe actions in order to change behavior, right? So it turns out that this like whole pyramid here is like kind of a pain, which is why most organizations really struggle at it. And especially even if they have a good implementation of reporting and dashboarding, what have you, they certainly struggle at this part up here. So we're going to talk about how AI kind of helps with this part up here. And so as just kind of a mechanism by which to characterize this for folks, just kind of get you into the mode of like, really, Pete, is it all that hard? I'll kind of prove it to you, right? So this is a single tile from a dashboard. This is actually a screenshot. Sean will appreciate this. This is a screenshot from a Salesforce dashboard from like 3 years ago or so. And it's pretty simple, you'd think. It's how many ops are owned on a per AE basis, right, for a bunch of different AEs, right? And so what I would challenge everyone at home, all you listeners, is to say, hey, what's going on here? What's going on? What should I maybe think about here? And so the funny thing is like, if you let your eyes kind of go across this, pretty quickly you can be like, well, I mean, like, there's different bars, they're different heights. I guess we have these reps at the bottom here. Oh, looks like we have the stages here. Oh, the reps have like a different mix of stages. That makes this a little bit more complicated. I wonder what insights I can derive from this. And so don't worry, I'm not going to like call on anybody in the audience or anything like that, but if you could kind of feel yourself saying like, man, I'm not 100% sure what I would take out of this, you're not alone, because it turns out turning visible math into like what we call human actionable meaning is like not super easy, right? And so I'll just kind of like answer the questions here. So like if you look at this, a couple of the insights that pop out would be, if we look at Lizzie here and Monica, you can see that they're a little bit light on opportunity ownership. Okay, cool. That's not the most complicated insight in the world. We can see that Brian, Carson, Peter, and Sean are pretty well loaded with respect to ops. Again, kind of obvious. If we then get into the per op stage here, this is where things get like maybe a little bit more complicated. We can see that actually Peter here looks like he's got a little bit of a log jam in terms of ops that are in proposal. Okay, that's not exactly the most obvious thing in the world. Sean, Monkey Shines, has a bit of a log jam in security review, and also in meeting pending here. Okay, so it's kind of not like, these would be like pretty non-obvious examples here. And so, what we might think there is like, okay, why does Peter have a logjam in proposals? Why does Sean have a logjam in security reviews? And what can we do about it? But first, we'd have to know. We'd have to detect that. And then the last thing, that kind of the most kind of difficult thing to derive here, would be that it looks like Lizzie, although she has a similar number of opportunities as Monica, doesn't really look like she has anything down funnel. Right? She doesn't have anything in proposals. She doesn't really have anything in, or as much in pilot here, manager reviews. And so that's actually a really interesting thing too, because that might indicate to us that, okay, well, maybe she has like a leaky pipe up funnel, like things don't get down funnel because of challenges at the top of the funnel. Okay, cool. So that was like a lot, right? And like, I'm pretty intimate with the story of like these reps right here, but like, I think the thing is that you could kind of imagine like, man, that wasn't the easiest thing in the world to kind of figure out what was going on there. Now multiply that by like a couple dozen, right? And so now you can kind of appreciate why first level managers, second level managers, et cetera, oftentimes reject management by metric, because it's just it's looking for needles in a stack of needles, right? Not even a stack of not even a haystack. It's and most sales managers have not gotten into didn't get into sales in order to interpret squiggly lines. They got into sales in order to form relationships and be communicators and to have form customer relationships and elicit pain and what have you. And so it's not super surprising that this is why most organizations struggle to get their managers to manage by metric. Sean, anything you wanted to comment on in this kind of like little intuition pump that we have here?
I think you hit on the head, and there's like two different kinds of people I think of when you're talking about like a first level manager and like looking at these reports. You have the one where I just don't want to do this because I don't have the time to do it. I'm not comfortable with it. And then you have the other person, probably a little bit like me. You're very curious. You feel like you're a little bit of Sherlock Holmes, and it's like I want to try to connect as many dots as possible. Well, if you're like me and you've done that, like I used to at Yelp, right? I had like the 15 reps and I had like my shadow CRM. Damn, 3 hours goes by fast after trying to look at all of this and interpret it and then put the pieces together to like verbally talk through it. And so it's just tough because there's so many other things that a first level manager has to be doing all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I also would argue that like that second genre of human is probably like less than 20% being generous, 20% of the population. And so the point is that like as leaders, we're responsible for making our managers and our reps successful. And so but I think it's important to note that like this is why this can be like it's gonna be less than ideal for both of those kind of personas. This is a fun comic that someone sent me a couple years ago, as relates to the notion of like dashboard sprawl and dashboard diving. Like all of our new dashboard has all the different KPIs we can track now. What's that one down at the bottom that's going to zero? Oh, that's how well we understand them and can like pay attention to them. It's not. It's no lie. And so cool, right? So now that like one of the ways that Atrium has solved this historically was by doing this interpretation statistically, right? Doing stats. And what we kind of say like pre-digesting this. And so you can kind of see like this is an example. This is a screenshot out of Atrium where so Atrium, has a number of statistical anomaly and alerting functionality, one of which is tracking progress towards goals. So this organization in question has set a goal on 500 calls to be sent or to be made in a given month. And what the software is doing is it's doing the stats and it's saying, hey, you know what? This rep is 60% behind schedule to hit their goal this month. The problem with this, and like this is great because like it's doing the stats, so rather than us having to visually derive that issue. So here's the issue, right? The problem is it didn't say, hey, this is why this matters and this is what I should do about it. Right. And so in this case, what you like to imagine you're an SDR manager, an AE manager, and you saw this. Well, what's the next question that you're going to ask? You're going to say, okay, like what should I like? What's the root cause and what should I do about this? And so you can imagine the things that pop to mind would be like, okay, well, like, is this a general low activity thing? Right? Is it a call thing and an email thing or whatever? Like, oh, is he actually making it up with email? Is he afraid of calling? Like he's off as compared to his peers. Does he have enough contacts to call? Like, is that the issue? Does he have accurate number data? There's all these other things that as a manager, you might be, okay, like what's the next act? So like, while this is really helpful, the question would be like, okay, what is the next action I might engage in, either from a coaching standpoint or an investigation standpoint as a manager in order to figure out what's going on and ultimately change behavior. That's what we do as managers. We change behavior. And so this is where, this piece right here is where AI can be really helpful and how Atrium has applied that in our new AI sales management assistant sales coach. And it's specifically around synthesis and interpretation of metrics and combinations of metrics, and then also recommendations and actions. And so I'm just going to give a really quick primer on how these large language model AIs work, because like this is the kind of current growth or like explosion of AI functionality in the market is the result of this new technology called large language models. You might be familiar with them in the context of OpenAI's ChatGPT or Google's Bard or Anthropic's Claude or what have you. They're all kind of the same functionality. And so essentially what these large language models do is they ingest tons and tons and tons and tons of content from the web, primarily text. And what they do is they map relationships between words. And when I say like tons of content, I mean tons of content, like trillions of tokens and characters. And so the way that they do this is they map relationships between words, and in so doing, that's how they create meaning. And so as an example for folks, and this is super reductive, so don't get mad at me, but the word sales occurs very frequently with the word rep. And the word rep occurs very frequently with the word meetings. And the word meetings occurs very frequently with the word more. And the word more occurs very frequently with the words better and good. And so by given that these show up with each other so many times across the entire text corpus that these large language models have consumed, what they're able to know is that in the context of sales, more meetings is generally good, right? And so that's very reductive, obviously, but I think that's important to understand, like how these large language models are able to like understand different topics, right? And so based on this, what these large language models, they know sales basics like pretty okay, right? And so as a result, what they can do is they can provide synthesis and recommended actions if you prompt them appropriately. And so as an example there, like if you're able to prompt a large language model with a set of facts, like this rep is engaging in sending more emails, touching more accounts, and making more calls, right? Like if you gave it that set of facts, the large language model could say, this AE is working harder, you should give them a high five, right? So what you'll notice is that's a synthesis and then also a recommendation, right? Like nothing about sending more emails or touching more accounts or making more calls on its face necessarily means working harder, right? You have to make a leap, right? A cognitive leap in order to do that synthesis and then provide a recommendation there. And so that's essentially how Atrium leverages these large language models, is by taking this information that Atrium already has in the form of these statistical anomalies, what we call facts, and then wrapping them in relevant prompting, sending them through state-of-the-art large language models, back from which comes synthesis and distillation, recommendations, and then the ability to do actions. Right, and so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit here today. And so this is what it kind of looks like in practice here. This is a nice little animated GIF. Don't worry, you're going to get a live demo here in a second. But what Atrium does and what Sales Coach does is it takes those facts and questions, and it generates a synthesized, bespoke synthesis and recommendations from that. And so you can kind of see what that looks like here. So we were looking at our buddy Cedric the Sorcerer earlier, who was a little bit behind the 8 ball with respect to his call volume. And so you can see the recommendations that come out of this are things like, hey, if this rep is behind on their monthly goals, maybe we need to get a little bit tighter on our goaling and maybe goal on a daily basis, right? Because like it seems like this isn't working. Or maybe what we need to do is check out and see like what he's doing in his calling that's taking him so long. Like is he doing that SDR thing where he like spends 10 minutes researching somebody before he like dials? True story, happens a lot, right? Or is he just like not prioritizing enough time for calling? Does he need some time management assistant here because his calendar is filled up with a bunch of other things instead? But the point is that what this does is it takes what the large language model AI does. It takes these facts and then provides these sets of recommendations that are a good jumping off point. Sean, because obviously like Sales Coach has been around in Atrium for a couple months now, when you're talking to managers about these recommendations, what are the things that they kind of say is like most useful about it to them?
Yeah, like the kind of a common feedback I'm hearing a lot is people are comparing this to like having their own executive assistant for all of their salespeople. Um, and it's right. Like that kind of work that you get on the right hand side could take people like a couple all-nighters to do for like all of their reps all of the time across all of their teams. And so that's been a lot of the feedback for folks is like, I would love to get around to actually writing something out versus going by the seat of my pants after interpreting the data ahead of a one-on-one. Yeah, so that's been the feedback we've gotten over the last few months here.
Yeah, I think the instantaneous nature of it is something that I think people really appreciate. And I think it kind of goes to your point about like the propeller head sales manager or sales operations person who's like, man, if I had infinite time and infinite cans of Red Bull, I could stay up all night long doing all this interpretation. I think my buddy who's a former CRO of a Series D company, I chatted her demo video on LinkedIn the other day of Sales Coach, and she was like, "Oh man, this is crazy! Like this use, we would have our RevOps team do a 40-page deck every 4 weeks that is just like this team Sales Coach, which I'll show you later. This just automatically generates it." And I was like, "Thanks." Pretty cool. Cool. So like, one metric is all well and good, but what Sales Coach does is it does it across a variety of these metrics as well. Or sorry, different functionalities in Atrium. So for instance, Atrium has this concept of a strategy insight, which has a series of metrics that are moving together in a way that indicates a potential root cause. So as an example, this rep right here, he's got 70% lower bookings. It looks like it's being driven by a 30% lower ASP and 13% fewer new biz ops owned as compared to their peers, right? But the sales cycle is faster, okay? And the win rate is kind of the same. And so what this is an example of that synthesis and recommendation. So what the sales coach is doing here is it's saying, hey man, like it looks like the high order bit here is really that this rep's ASP is a lot lower. Maybe you should dig into that. Like, what could potentially be the root causes of a low ASP? Well, it might be doing a bad job with proposal construction. Are you like shooting too low? Are you not trying to take too big of a swing to start? Or are you just dropping your pants on pricing? Whatever it is, we got to investigate that because those are the things that are probably creating the root cause here. The thing that's also kind of fascinating here, and again, this was just automatically generated by the AI, is, and it's pretty non-obvious, is, hey, can we leverage the faster sales cycle? Because this guy's got the same win rate as his peers, but he's got a much shorter sales cycle. So if we can just like give him the ball more, right? Like, yeah, we love that ASP to go up, but if he's like, if his batting average is good here and he gets things through quickly, if we can just get him the ball more, maybe we can make up for this in some sort of capacity. And so like that's actually a really pretty impressive synthesis and analysis there. That's like Sean at like 1 a.m. on his 5th Red Bull, figuring that out. And in this case, it was just automatically done, right? So that's strategy insights. And of course, then the next thing would be like, okay, as a manager, well, we're not just looking at these one things. The big question as a manager is what's going on with a rep, right? Like what's going on across the well, what's the biggest thing that I need to focus on, and an area of improvements. And so Sales Coach will do that as well by looking across all of the metrics, kind of active anomalies for a given rep, and then popping out what the biggest issues are and how to address them, right? Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and pop into a demo here to kind of show you guys what this looks like. This is an Atrium account here. I'm logged in to a demo instance with real data, real live data, but anonymized here. And so as a manager, this is my manager homepage here. We kind of like to joke that the manager homepage kind of is set up like a newspaper with headlines at the top, right? Who needs help? Who deserves kudos? A little bit of goal information here, goal tracking, and then our kind of like metrics here at the bottom. And so while Atrium is a great way for managers to be aware of what's going on with their teams and coach with data, Sales Coach takes it even further. And so I'll kind of show you some examples of what this looks like here on this individual rep. This is a rep named Skippy Bunny here. It's a Disney character. That's how our anonymization system works. He's an inside sales rep in the corporate segment. And so what I'm going to do here is you can see that this organization has set some goals here. Today's Wednesday, I guess. And so in this case, the org has said, hey, we have an expectation that all of our our corporate inside sales reps send 150 customer facing emails a week. And so today is Wednesday. And what Atrium is doing is it's saying, hey, this rep is actually a little bit behind pace to hit their goal in question, right? And so what should we do about that, right? And so what we can do is we can launch Sales Coach here. And what that will do is that will synthesize exactly what's happening here and say, hey, you know what, this guy is, behind schedule. We think he's going to land at like, 90 emails or so, which is going to be around like 30 or 40% behind where we want him to land. And again, this is just doing the stats. And so in this case, the recommendations that are coming back are saying, hey, you know what, probably the right thing for us to do here, not dissimilar to what we were looking at in the slides earlier, is focus in on maybe setting a daily goal for this rep, because if he's behind with respect to the week, that seems like maybe we need to tighten the screws down just a little bit there. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to look at this rep's calendar and see if there's enough space on the calendar for that rep to actually do the prospecting he's supposed to be doing. Is this rep using the tooling in question? And I think the interesting thing with a lot of these things is that some of these questions are really like not the most obvious things in the world. And we've seen this with our customers before, where the manager detects the fact that the rep is under volume with respect to email engagement, and when then they go and they investigate it, lo and behold, like the rep is using their sales engagement tool wrong, or if their email engagement reply rates are off, it turns out that they're using the wrong templates. So it's these things that are actually not about like level of effort, but more about like just kind of changing their swing a little bit, like, oh, okay, cool, like you're holding the bat wrong. And so by help as a manager identifying those issues and then being able to like take that next action can really remediate a bunch of like what would otherwise be a pretty big problem there. Cool. So that's a single metric sales coach, which is kind of cool. Maybe not like blow your socks off, but when you get more when you have more metrics in question and more kind of like facts, sales coach gets even better. So in this case, Skippy Bunny here has a similar number of bookings to his peers, but really has this opportunity ownership deficit here. And what's in spite of the fact that he's got a bit of a shorter sales cycle, it looks like his ASP is the same as everybody else's or so, and then his win rate is the same as everybody else's. And so in this case, what sales coach is saying is like, hey, it really seems like this rep, what we need to do is to tackle the number of new business opportunities. And moreover, this would be kind of like the slides we were looking at earlier. We could leverage their quicker sales cycle by loading this rep up a little bit more, right? And a couple other recommendations as well there. So that's cool. But then the thing with with a rep is when you're looking at a given rep, there's so many different things that could be going on with them. Excuse me. And so looking across the totality of like their performance state, if you will, can kind of be a lot sometimes. And so Atrium historically has helped with this by making it such that Atrium will bubble up to the manager what's going on with that rep, right? Those facts, if you will, like in this case, his sales cycle is a little bit shorter. His ASP has increased recently, which is great. Looks like he's really working his tail off with respect to customer facing meetings, kind of crushing his goals there. But there's a lot of stuff going on here. And so to synthesize that and kind of focus in on like what the top items are is exactly what Sales Coach does on these as relates to a rep profile page. And so in this case, what we can see here is Sales Coach is looking across all of those live alerts for Skippy Bunny here, calling out the biggest themes in question, and then suggesting relevant next actions there. So as an example, it looks like Skippy Bunny here is pretty light with respect to account engagement. You can see that he's got a 70% lower number of accounts engaged as compared to his peers, and sales coach is calling that out. Moreover, one of the things that what that sales coach is identifying here is that he's got a pretty big pipeline issue across opportunities owned, pipeline by close date, and then pipeline ownership. And so that's like the next big thing to really look at there. And so the idea here as a manager is that I can just go to a rep's profile page, hit sales coach, and it'll synthesize what's going on to me and present it to me in written English in a way such that I don't have to spend my time digging through those, looking through needles in the haystack, but instead I can spend my time taking this information, then coaching, and then changing the rep's behavior for the better. Sean, before we move on to the team stuff, anything you wanted to comment on here?
Yeah, I mean, for like myself, so like I use this for my rep one-on-ones, or if I'm just like curious or like first thing in the morning, like, hey, what should I care about? Like clicking on this just makes it so much easier for me to not get off the rails and maybe go start looking into something different. This keeps me in check because I can have the tendency of like, oh, I'm gonna go down this rabbit hole today, and this keeps me centered. So that's why I like to use it myself.
Yeah. Cool. And then I think, as a manager, I think that there's a good point there, which is, okay, great, but it's not like you're responsible for one rep, you're actually responsible for many reps, right? And so this is why Atrium has done this statistically in a variety of ways historically, like by aggregating strategy insights, by kind of telling you, hey, which reps might need help and which reps deserve kudos, again, by kind of aggregating those metrics. What Team Sales Coach does is it looks across all of those live anomalies, kind of like we were doing with Skippy Bunny here, but across the entirety of a team, right? So both team level topics, right? So in this case, this is the quote unquote Drake team of mid-market or commercial AEs. So team level metrics and kind of anomalies there, but also doing that for each and every rep as well, right? So like here's a rep Pfeiffer Pig here, here's a rep Marcelite Garner, but what the software is doing or the AI is doing is going across all of these metrics and all of these alerts for all of these teams and all these reps, and then synthesizing, right, what is going on and providing recommendations there. So as an example, what Sales Coach is noticing is that there appears to be a delay in sales cycle on the Drake team and the Tilly team, another team that reports into this team. And it looks like Princess Elawani, Toby Turtle, Marcelite Garner, and Ted Betterhead are all taking longer to close deals. And actually, if we want to go ahead and look at that really quickly, what we could do is we could pop in there and lo and behold, we can kind of see that that's the case here with a number of these different reps, right? Similarly, there's just a lower amount of activity happening across the team, and then what Sales Coach is doing is it's calling out the specific reps that appear to have those shortfalls, right? Moreover, it's prescribing to me a plan of action, so indicating to me, hey, you know what? These are the things to potentially think about as relates to solving these problems. Again, team-wide. It's doing a quick analysis of, hey, these are the reps that you might want to check out because these are the reps that potentially be worried about. And specifically why. So Princess Elawani here seems to be underperforming with respect to activity and pipeline value, and they're behind schedule to hit their new ops own goal this month. Okay, cool. And then similarly, which reps to celebrate and to encourage here. And so this is showing us the reps that seem to have more positive things that are going on, and kind of citing to me which ones that we should be checking out next. So the whole idea here is which this looks across the entirety of the team and helps me understand, where as a manager I should be spending my time, and how I could in order to make the biggest impact on my team, both across the entire team thematically, but also on a per rep basis, right? So it's calling out exactly where I should be paying attention to there. So that's the kind of the demo I wanted to share with folks there. In terms of like what we've seen with our customers so far to date, people have been really stoked. Sales leaders, so second level leaders, third level leaders are particularly stoked on this because one of the big challenges that they have with these second level and third level leaders is reliably getting your first level managers to manage in an effective way or manage at all, right? We're coming out of like 5 to 10 years of very expansionary economic environments where deals were easier to come by, budgets were a little bit looser, things like that. And so what that means is a lot of folks, a lot of managers who came up under under that profile, haven't had to manage as hands-on and proactively as as might be desired or might be needed in the current environment. We've seen from sales and revenue enablement folks, people are just extremely stoked because they can't be everywhere at once, and so the notion of having a sales enablement helper attached to every manager, every rep, et cetera, providing them coaching and kind of recommendations when enablement can't be there is something that's really exciting to them. And then of course, operations, who's traditionally responsible for providing analytical insights and kind of data access to the business, to managers and leaders, are particularly excited about this because this really makes that this helps them achieve the goal of enabling their managers to manage by metric in a way that allows them to actually do it versus ops having to do the interpretation for them, which unfortunately operations is rarely staffed in order to do that level of interpretation for those managers. Sean, anything you wanted to comment on here?
And sorry again, Pete, I was just responding. Adam and Tyler, thanks for your questions in there, as well as you, Tejas. No, I think you nailed it right there. The thing to kind of just like tie it all back to, like our customers are fantastic and they're kind of getting the same thing that I personally have felt, which is I can be spending my time doing so many other things like acting on certain insights. So to just have everything like written up for me, have it written up for somebody like our customers over at BetterUp or Staffbase or User Gems is just so helpful. Because time is valuable. I also want to have a little bit of a personal life after like 5:30. So getting things written up for me is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I think across the board, what we've been seeing from our customers is that people have been extremely stoked on this. Obviously every sales coach recommendation has a, was this helpful? Was this not helpful? Feedback, and we've been batting. I think we're actually like in the high 800s right now, which is pretty great. The thing I wanted to touch on next there is we were talking about this notion of synthesis and recommendations and then followed by actions, right? Because what we want to do is we want managers to be able to act on these things. And so that's something that Sales Coach also really helps managers do in a very easy way, where one, if we have the insight, like this rep has more untouched ops than his peers, and then we provide the recommendations like, hey, these are the things you should be thinking about potentially prescribing to your rep. Okay, how do I actually take that action? And so you might chuckle about that and say like, well, what do you mean? Like you just talk to the rep or you send them an email or you put together a coaching plan. But actually, if you think about like the required actions in those things that I just said, and then you think about, first time managers, maybe mid-level career managers, those aren't the easiest things to do in the world, and moreover, their work, right? So as an example, what Sales Coach will help you do is generate the actions off of these recommendations once you've validated that you want to prescribe an action. So as an example, in this case, we've got a rep who has an untouched opportunity situation. And what we want to do is we want to resolve this maybe over the next couple of weeks. Okay, let's generate a coaching schedule. right? So like on Monday, we're going to talk about these things right here. On Thursday, we're going to check in. We're going to talk about these things. The following week, we're going to have our third coaching session on this particular topic, and then the fourth week, we're going to have the Thursday of the second week, we're going to have our final coaching session on this particular topic, and resolve and see if we've resolved this situation, right? And this is generated specifically off of this challenge right here, just generated with the click of a mouse for the manager in question. Similarly, um, talk tracks associated with having a conversation with the rep on how to address these topics. And so again, folks might kind of chuckle and say, well, what are you talking about? Like, managers know how to talk with their reps about untouched ops or activity levels or what have you. It's like, I don't know. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. And so by having something say, hey, like, here's some scripting for this, right? You don't have to use it 100%, but this is how to think about this from a jumping off point, right? And then the same is true with rep facing email. Like, for instance, if we wanted to, instead of doing this from a coaching standpoint, instead of doing like a formal coaching plan or what have you, we just wanted to do like a one-off around like, hey, I'm noticing that your calling activity isn't where it should be, and I wanted to document like, hey, I want to provide that feedback to you, and moreover, I wanted to document it for posterity. Again, automatically generate the email in order to send that to the rep. Of course, the manager can like modify it as he or she sees fit. But the idea here is like, what we ultimately as managers, what we want to do is we want to change behavior, and the way that we change behavior is by actually like communicating and holding reps accountable. And so what this does, these actions make that much easier for reps. For managers. Sean, anything you wanted to comment on here as relates to this notion of like actions and taking actions on these insights and recommendations?
Yeah, this is the thing that I'm like really, really excited about. Like, obviously, all of the AI that we've put in here to get these insights is great, but it's only as good as what your follow-up actually is. So to have this now also do that for us, it makes you just as a first level leader look like a pro. Not maybe just to your reps, but to the people that like you're reporting to as well, to show like this is my plan of attack on something. It's just next level stuff that a lot of people don't have the time to actually do themselves.
Yeah, it's kind of like, hey, you know what? Before I go and send this email to this rep, maybe what I should go do is go reread Corey Bray's Five Secrets of the Sales Coach and Michelle Vizana's Crushing Quota or what have you. Who's got time for that? I guess I just won't send the email. Versus, hey, like, here's a best practices like managerial coaching email, right? Or coaching talk tracks on the specific topic right here. Generated in the point at which you need it, versus a blank piece of paper or a blank Zoom screen staring at you, such that instead of having that coaching conversation, lo and behold, you just end up talking about deals again. Turns out, right?
And a lot of the customers that we talk with about this as well, like the process to actually do this, it's not set in stone for a lot of managers. And you think about like the revenue operations and enablement departments, like this is all something that I've heard that people want to get to and want to have more standardized. And so the fact that we're able to like do this for them now on an automatic basis, we're helping RevOps with something that's always been on the list. It sounds like for them to like get
Right.
done, but it's like, damn, where do we start with this?
Yeah, consistency, right? Like, oh man, we really need to implement a consistent coaching playbook and make sure that our managers are coaching appropriately, but we got to implement that CPQ system first. Darn. Yeah. Well, that's a good segue because we're going to talk a little bit about leadership and ops here for a second. And so, leadership and ops, they have a little bit of a different set of pain points than the first level manager, but they still have areas where AI can help them from a managerial standpoint. The way that we think about this is like we say about Atrium that it helps sales organizations align, standardize, and embed a managerial playbook in their organization. The way that Atrium has historically done this is through a bunch of metrics interpretation and monitoring, like goal monitoring, performance management, ramp monitoring. The AI-driven sales coaching kind of layers on top of that in order to help make sure that those managers are managing in a way that is effective and managing it all, really, rather than being like super reps in the deals, managing, deals, et cetera. And so like leaders, CROs, VPs of sales, VPs of RevOps, VPs of revenue enablement, um, have that on their list, their to-do list of, hey, we really need our managers to be hands-on and actually like managing. But the program, like the holistic revenue enablement or manager enablement program required in order to successfully implement that sounds like an act of Congress. And so the notion of like being able to wave a magic wand and have these managers managing more effectively with a little AI sales management system is very appealing to them. Now that said, leaders also want to, like, it's kind of like a trust but verify situation. Leaders want to look across teams and understand what's happening. So yes, a manager is responsible for his or her team, these 6 reps, these 8 reps, these 10 reps, or what have you. But the VP of sales who sits on top of those 4 teams also wants to understand what's happening, right? Not just on this team right here, or this team right here, or this team right here, but across all of them. And so the ability for AI to look across those themes and say, hey, like, it turns out the biggest area of concern across your entirety of your sales organization, it looks like you guys have kind of a pipe gen sitch. Like, it looks like there's a pipe gen issue. It's not really the NORAM team. It seems like it's the EMEA team that is, it's like not NORAM mid-market and North America commercial, they're fine. It really seems that like where our pipe gen softness is coming from is from the EMEA team, and you would want to dig in there. And so that's an example of something that would probably take a RevOps analyst like an entire day to like poring over a bunch of dashboard diving and what have you in order to come up with that interpretation. The LLM can just like span across it in a series of minutes and figure that out. And this is like more of a future concept. This is something that like what we're going to be doing in the future is helping like revenue leaders, so CROs, VP RevOps, et cetera, ask very specific questions. And by specific, I mean like common questions, like, hey, where are we going to land this quarter? How is the organization's activity looking? Right? How is next quarter looking? Where is their risk? How's our mid-funnel pipeline looking? All of these kind of questions are, questions that can be answered by the set of facts that are already present in this case, in an organization's Atrium account, but it just becomes a question of interpreting them effectively. This is a little bit kind of like more in the future. So, in summary, one of the things that we're really excited about is how this large language model driven AI can really help managers, leaders, operations, and even reps more effectively manage by metric, right? And improve their performance through better awareness and kind of taking action on issues. And one of the things that we kind of joke about is that we're kind of exiting this era of shoving a bunch of tiles and a bunch of dashboards in the face of managers and leaders and frankly folks who are like not super excited about diving into a set of a bunch of impenetrable dashboards and trying to puzzle through what's going on. And instead, we're entering an era where AI sales management assistants can tell you exactly what's going on with your team, where you should look, such that managers can kind of spend their time holding their reps accountable, coaching them to success, and driving better output there. Sean, anything to touch on before we adjourn here?
I don't think so. Kind of just nailed it there.
Nice.